Hi everyone, welcome to the Car Chat podcast. And with me today, I have Simon Lambert from Caterham Cars. Hi Simon.
Hi Sam, how are you?
Very good, thanks. Can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, I am the Motorsport and Technical Director for Caterham Cars. It's important that everyone who works here has at least two jobs. So my time is split depending on what's happening during the year, but obviously we're about to head into a new race season, so I'm very focused on that at the moment. And over the winter, it's sort of edged towards the engineering side, but fortunately I have a competent engineering team that can take care of things when I'm busy at the track. I've been doing that for about the last 10 years and just come up to 20 years at Caterham, believe it or not.
Wow, that's a long time.
It is a long time, and it's worse than that. I was a supplier to Caterham for 10 years before that. I started when I was 5, and I've been an owner for 25 years.
Nice. Okay, so let's sort of go back to the beginning. Where does it all begin? Have you been a car person since year dot?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I grew up with top trumps and just being fascinated by whatever my dad had. And as back in those days, everyone had company cars. And so we used to have Ford brochures lying around the house all the time. And I knew them from cover to cover. So as a 6-year-old, I could tell you the difference between a Cortina 1.6 GL and an L just by looking at them as they pass. Yeah.
Nice. And then, so you progressed from being 6.
Yeah, well, it depends who you ask.
And then what was did you go straight into sort of car-based stuff work-wise, or did you study something? What happened?
A lot happened between sort of then and I ended up working for a very small division of a car dealership that was a Ford power product dealer, which is an unusual arm of Ford. Most people won't know what that is. And we sold engines and Ford components to all areas of industry. Okay. And 2 places we specialised. One was offshore oil rigs and engines for there, which was very interesting, and the car industry as well. And Caterham was one of our customers. So we were supplying Caterham with Ford engines, Ford gearboxes, differentials, and other bits and pieces. So I knew Caterham, obviously being a car nut, so you know all about them, but I became a supplier to them in 1990.
And then, so what does that sort of entail? Do they send you... What were you in charge of at that point? Do they send you the details of an engine they want and then Ford makes it, or how does it work?
It's completely the other way around, really. And it's not too different today. We are a very, very small company. We have a big shop window. Lots of people know us, but we are a small company. So it was a case of shopping around to see what was available. Unfortunately for me back then, there were very few companies doing or geared up in the way that Ford were to be able to provide small manufacturers with engines and components. It's a very, very specialist arm, and it's sort of grown out of the tractors randomly. A handful of people left in a Ford office and had managed to keep it going. It's still going to this day very successfully. So we were providing the engines for a while. Unfortunately, the Ford product didn't suit, so it ended up being gearboxes, diffs, and a few other bits and pieces on the car. But it did mean that I kept coming to Dartford for meetings from time to time. Any excuse really to have a wander around the factory. We'd be lent a car every now and again, for whatever reason. So I was determined to buy one. Unfortunately, my other half is an absolute car nut as well. Which is important. It's important that one of us has a proper job so she can afford the things we want to have. And so we were saving up to buy a 7 whilst I was a supplier. And then must have been the back end of 94, as the account manager for Caterham, this document came through my desk. It might have even been a fax, one of those heated things that curled up. All about this new race series called the Scholarship. It's for completely novice drivers. It was subsidised by the sponsorship. It was very low price. It was a fantastic thing. And they wanted us to be a sponsor. And I'm reading through this thing thinking, this is all my dreams come true. I could have a Caterham and I could become a racing driver as well. So I just went massively into debt and did that. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Oh, perfect. So is that that's like the original academy?
It's the original academy. It was called Scholarship for a while and it changed its name. I can't remember when, to be honest. It was slightly before I joined. But that makes me Academy driver number 1. So it's actually a bizarre twist of fate that now Academy is my baby and I look after it and have turned it into what it is today.
What was it like back then? Like, what is the format similar, or has it changed quite a lot?
In some ways it was. We were all novices, but there was a lot fewer controls, far fewer controls. So people were doing other little bits of racing around the outside. Some people had significantly more experience than others. I mean, track days weren't a readily available thing back then either. And we talk about the mid-90s, it sounds like forever ago, depending on how old you are.
Doesn't sound like that long ago to me.
Well, it doesn't to me, but to other people, yes, it might as well have been prehistory. Yeah, you had cars. The format of the program was 2 auto tests, then 4 sprints, hill climbs, and 2 races at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So my claim to fame was I won the very first academy race. It's something I'm very, very proud of.
Nice. Yeah. You can hold that up high forever.
Yeah. It's a very happy memory. You know, I am very proud of that. So it retains a lot of the same features. The car has progressed. The professionalism with which we run the series and our capability of providing support to the drivers has grown immensely. You know, we've got 25 years of experience now doing this. Perhaps the biggest change is at the end of that academy year, the next step was to a series that was team supported. It got through a lot of tyres, was very, very serious. It was an enormous step. You know, everything I had spent had gone into this scholarship year, and there was no way I could continue.
Yeah.
But since the early 2000s, we've been building this, what we call a ladder of motorsport. So you can come out of academy and progress into road sport. The names get a little bit confusing, but which is almost a second year of academy. It's a minor modification to your car.
Yeah.
And it's geared purely towards those people that have come out of academy the previous year, and then they move on and so on and up through the ladder. And it means you can have 4 years of racing in the same car. The car gets upgraded each year. It feels different. You can tell it's faster by, or you shouldn't need to tell it's faster by looking at the timer. It will feel much different, give you a different experience. Racing against the people you've come through racing with, so you get to know them, and the camaraderie in the paddock's fantastic.
That's fun.
Yeah.
So can you explain, like, let's go through the ladder in terms of the car. So you start off, what is the first car? How much does it cost? What's the process? Academy year 1.
So the Academy package, when you buy the Academy is a package rather than just a car.
Yep.
The car itself is essentially a 7270 stripped out. Yeah. The engine is slightly detuned, 125 horsepower, 5-speed gearbox, open differential. All the componentry on it is effectively road-based. It's very, very simple and low cost. It's to keep the cost of the car down.
Yeah.
There's no carbon fibre on there. If you break that, that's just expensive. You don't need to do that. So we don't do that sort of thing. The tyres are a very big part of Academy. They're terrible. They're really awful. But and they even say Academy around the outside of it as well. We're so proud of them. But they teach people car control at a much lower speed.
Okay.
And competitors have tried to do the same. And around the world, actually, we've had the sort of feedback from people who've done those series who say to us, now we understand why you use those tyres. It'd be much easier to sell if you had nice, grippy, sexy tyres.
Yeah.
That just means that you're more likely to have an accident and at a higher speed. So we want to hang on to our customers, you know, so we sort of can teach them car control through the Academy. The car is one part. The package of racing is the other part. And I would say included in that package is the 55 other drivers to take part in it. You're going to do a sprint and 6 races. In fact, it's going to be 7 races next year, actually. So that has changed quite a lot. But one of the first things we do is we sit everyone down in a room in December and tell them what's going to happen in the year, to prepare them for the year, basically. It's what previous Academy drivers said we should have done. So we've been doing it for 15 years now. And you've got 56 strangers in the room. No one knows each other. I stand in front of them and tell them, you're going to make some great friends every year. And the look on their faces every year without fail is, yeah, whatever. I'm here to live out my racing dream. I'm not going to make, I've got enough friends, fine, yeah. And every year we have drivers that come back from the previous year to help out. They do it. We have to turn them away, actually. We can only have so many, we can fit on the sofas, who will say, he's not lying. I've just been to his wedding. I'm going skiing with him. That's cool. You've got 56 very like-minded people. Yeah. And they're all achieving a sort of a common goal or a common dream. And they can't help but find friends amongst that, which is fantastic. And selfishly, it's great for Caterham because you want to carry on racing with your mates.
Yeah.
So that's Academy in a very, very brief nutshell. I could talk about that all day.
And how much is the Academy package?
I would love to tell you, but I can't remember. It gets passed to me It's about, I think it is 29,995, something
Okay.
like that. It gets passed over to me after the salesmen have done their bit, if you like.
Yeah.
So from Academy, you move into Road Sport. We can't think of a better name at the moment. That's the problem there. It's the Academy car on those tyres that you wanted and with a rear anti-roll bar. So a subtle change to the suspension just to add a little level more control. And then you enter a full, proper race season, 7 weekends, 2 races every weekend. Yeah, so it's 14 rounds. Moving on from there to 7270. So that's very much, in fact, like what suited similar to the road car behind me, with a cage on, etc. You've taken the Academy car and we've changed the suspension now to stiffer track-orientated suspension. And the rev limit goes up because without the windscreen on, you can go a bit faster. But essentially, mechanically, the car is the same. There's no point in giving it a whole load more power and doing other things to the car because your experience won't grow necessarily. So these guys are into their 3rd year. They've now got a car that feels like a racing car. It looks like it too. The race formats are the same. 7 weekends, 2 races each weekend. The races grow to 30 minutes in length, which is actually a very long time in a racing car. A very long time.
So the first one's a 20.
The first one's a 20, and then we move to a 30-minute race.
And do you do it over a Saturday, Sunday, or just a Saturday?
Normally Saturday, Sunday. We have qualifying Saturday morning, race Saturday afternoon, and then a second race on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Some circuits are 1 day, very few. Most people like to spread the weekend out, and they enjoy testing on the Friday and sometimes on the Thursday as well.
Yeah.
A track day with no rules is what's often called, which the track operators won't thank us for.
It's pretty close to that.
Yeah, it is. I've often referred to it as race 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or race lost for a lot of people.
Race lost, yes. It is when all the drama happens. Yeah. So we'll tell you about our support team, in fact, in a second. Yeah. So that's 7270. And then the 4th and final year with that car is 7310. So that's reflecting the road range then, 270 and 310. And it's only at that point, that 4th year, where we give them more power. So you've got a power increase to 152 horsepower and a limited slip diff. So you can power slide out of corners and look like a hero, even though you're going slower. And that is probably the best car we make. It came about by accident, as a road car, I should say. It was a replacement for an outgoing series with the Ford Sigma engine that we use had a subtle change from fixed cam to variable valve time. And we did a conversion to the car for the race series.
Yeah.
And one of the engineers came into my office and he just said, have you driven the car? No, I haven't yet. And someone else came in, have you driven the car? No, either there's something badly wrong with it. So I took it out for a drive and I phoned up one of my colleagues at the commercial director. Here he is. This is him here, and this is photographic evidence of him actually hitting an apex. Which is, who knew? I said, you need to come up here and drive this car. So he drove it as well, and it's just the perfect 7. 152 horsepower. It's just exactly right for the car. Yeah, it's enough power to feel fast and remain utterly controllable. When you get into the faster and the bigger engine cars, the car starts calling the shots.
Yeah. And
whilst a lot of experienced drivers will really enjoy it, and that's the right car for them, for most people getting into a Caterham, that level is all you'll ever need.
Yeah, I've only driven one Caterham in the last couple of years, and it was a 310R.
Okay, yep.
And it was a slightly wet, crappy day, and I had the car for a day, and it's one of my top sort of 5 driving experiences, just honing around some small, muddy, slightly damp roads in the rain in a 310. Like, it had more than enough power and not tons of grip, being on, I think, on the slightly stickier compound in the wet. And it was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It's disappointing to hear that it's only in the top 5, rather than the top 3. We'll try harder. But yeah, for me, if you want to experience driving, you want the car to move about and you want to be able to control that with your right foot. Yeah. And it's kind of pointless having an enormous grip, super high performance car, because you just can't do that unless you're some kind of superhuman or you have, a total disregard for your car and everyone else around you and a lot of space. Of space, yeah. So whilst 7310 is just the best car we make, it just is. Possibly why I own an 420, because you never practice what you preach. But it's why I think the 7160 the little 3-cylinder Suzuki powered
Yeah.
car, is an absolutely amazing car. It's hugely overlooked here in the UK because people can't get their head past the 80 horsepower, you know.
No. Yeah.
But on 155 tyres, you can have so much fun. You can go around a roundabout absolutely sideways at sort of, 15, 20 miles an hour.
Yeah.
People walking past, pointing at you, wondering what you're doing. But you're having a really good time. I had a track evening at Donington once with a friend that was running the day.
Yeah.
And we had at our disposal a 620, talking one of the world's fastest cars here, and a 160. Took 620 out, did a couple of laps, and then spent the next 3 hours driving the 160. I was just having a better time. You're sliding everywhere, like 1950s four-wheel drifts, and then all of a sudden you realise you're catching that M3, just bit by bit, and then the next 10 laps become ever so focused as you gain on them by about a quarter of a second of that.
Yeah, there is a lot to be said for driving, not like slow car fast. Obviously you drive on track, you want to drive them all fast, but if you're in a slower car, catching up with other cars is amazing fun. Whereas if you're in a car that's just faster, you're only losing that race. If someone catches you, it's because you're worse at driving. Whereas catching up to someone in a really lightweight car that you might say has 80 horsepower, when the person pulls in, like, oh, what engine have you got in that? Like, only 8 horsepower. They're like, what? It's just so much fun.
It's a great car to drive. People do need to drive it to appreciate it. So having the narrow tyres is obviously a very big thing. It allows us to exploit just the 80 horsepower.
Yeah. So with the racing, do some people stick in a certain year, or do they all sort of migrate up to the top evolution of that car and then stay at the top?
In general, people move up. We've built a ladder, and people want to. It's successful because drivers want to progress. You don't want to stay doing the same thing. If you've done well, or you want to move on, you want to see progression yourself. So Academy is a 1-year deal only. It is novice drivers. It can only be. And the follow-on series, Road Sport, is a 1-year deal only as well. There's a limited amount of experience those guys have got. So it's quite mercenary, but they understand from the start that they are going to move on out to do something else, or hopefully into 270.
Yeah.
At that third level, you can stay there if you want, as long as you like, as long as we have space. Yeah. But most people don't. They want the upgrade and they want to move on. And we find that most people's sort of experience of racing is somewhere between a 2 and a 4 year life cycle.
Yeah.
After that sort of time, they've scratched that itch and they've done it and going to move on in their lives.
Yeah.
But fortunately for us, a number of people want to carry on and go further. And so we have the 7420, which is a dedicated race car from the outset, full race suspension, bespoke to the car, 6-speed, sequential gearbox. We don't declare the power output on that engine anymore. It's more than we originally said. It's the fastest car you can race without slicks or wings. Okay. So it's roughly on a par with what Formula Ford used to be pre-wings.
So what's that in terms of like a lap time of, do you know Silverstone? It's probably not a great Caterham track, Silverstone.
No, I'd love to quote one at you, and I should have been more prepared, but I really can't. Yeah. I'd have to sit here.
Do you know what that compares into I don't know. I don't know. Like a modern car driving around, probably a lot faster.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to put it in terms of time sometimes, but there isn't a road car that could stay with it on track.
Yeah. In terms of the driving experience, how does that change from your first car to the fully upgraded? Like, what is it? The feel of the car? How does it feel different?
That's one of the most important factors for us. Obviously, the car goes faster. But for me, as we've built the ladder, it has always been about improving the experience for the driver from 1 year to the next, so that they gain something. You don't want to spend some money upgrading your car and going to another year and just find it feels the same. Yeah. If it feels the same and everyone on the grid is going 2 seconds a lap faster, you won't notice you've had a change. So when you go from Academy to Road Sport, you suddenly find this world of grip and about 3 seconds a lap with the better tyres. And the rear anti-roll bar offers some more body control as well. You get to 270 with a stiffer suspension, and we're taking the windscreen and lights off. It looks and feels like a racing car. And it feels more like it's a cliche, but go-kart style handling, because the suspension's so stiff. At 310, you've now got a bit more power and you've got a limited diff. So you can get on the power out of the corner a little bit earlier, and you maybe light up the rear, and you have to provide a little bit of opposite lock. Moving into 420, all of that is just exaggerated. It's a very, very fast car. It's got still too much power for the amount of grip it's got, so it will slide about, and you're having to manhandle it everywhere.
Yeah.
But as you come up and your driving experience grows, you end up with a much more rewarding driving experience. And some people will say, if they've done a couple of years of racing in Academy and Motorsport, that actually driving 420 felt easier to them. It's now a little bit more natural, and they can control the car better because it's got more control over the rear wheels through the power.
Yeah.
And suspension is a little bit more tunable. There's more they can do with the car. So it's not as if it becomes an uncontrollable car or a knife edge car. We step away from that as much as we can. There are faster cars out there, that's for sure, but they won't be as much fun to drive. People often equate speed to fun, and the two things are.
Yeah,
it is absolutely not the same. Just because you're doing 600 miles an hour across the Atlantic in a 747, yeah, it's not as much fun as going downhill on a mountain bike at 30 miles an hour.
Yeah. Good analogy there. Are you on a similar, or you just get a slightly grippier, but you're on one tyre, not one tyre throughout, but you don't have a wet tyre?
For the Academy has its own tyre, which is based on a basic roads tyre. The middle series, as you like to call them, run on the Avon ZZS, which was designed for Caterham and developed on the Caterham. And the top series has the Avon ZZR, which is as close to being a slick as you can legally get. It's still road legal with very little tread pattern. And they use the ZZS as a wet tyre.
Okay. Yeah, because that was one of the things I did. I do some radical racing, and I raced there for SR1 Cup, which was the sort of their entry level thing.
Yeah.
And we had a tyre with very little tread with a really hard compound, and that was your tyre.
That was the tyre.
Yeah, and you were limited to a certain number per season, etc. And in the wet, it was just dangerous, to be honest. It was. I do wonder now if I went back, having had more experience and drove the same car, but it was still like you just aquaplane a lot if it was any sort of standing water or anything.
Radical's obviously a high grip car. It's an aero car. So it's probably quite a different driving experience. In the wet in the 7, it's going to move around an awful lot, and that's fine. When back in the days when I used to be racing, I used to find that if it got very wet, there was a woodcotter at Silverstone. You used to get a couple of little rivers that run across the track, before the start-finish line on the curve.
Yeah.
And you see people hit them and understeer, and it really takes speed out. So for me, what worked, it was my driving style, if you like, was if you went at them slightly sideways, you just sort of went through them and carried on up the road. Yeah. I remember doing that one day and getting more and more of an angle. I came back into the pits, and my other half had been timing me, and she said, "You enjoying that way?" "Yes." "Think it was fast, do you?" Yeah. You can get carried away and enjoy yourself a little bit too much.
Yeah.
But a Caterham, we say it's not big and it's not clever. We are very lucky with what we have there. If you put the best designers in a room and said, we want you to deliver the same driving experience as a 7, they're unlikely to come out with anything other than another 7.
Yeah.
Dynamically, the engine's too far forwards, you sit too far back. You end up with these masses at either end of the car, which means that when it starts to rotate, it actually happens quite slowly in terms of the car. So it communicates that to the driver. Yeah, so you really get a feel for what the car's doing. If you compare that to a really well-engineered similar car like an Elise, which is an excellent car, it really is. But the car dynamics mean that when it starts to break away, you get very little notice. I used to really enjoy driving the Elise, but I felt like I ought to have 3 or 4 Red Bulls first to stay on top of it if you're going to push it hard.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the Caterham a lot of fun to drive. We don't have the weights. That's obviously an enormous factor in all of this.
Yeah.
But it's where the weight in the car actually is that really counts for it.
Yeah, that's definitely like whenever I've driven a Caterham a couple of times on track and a little bit on the road, and immediately you're sometimes a little bit intimidated because you're like, oh, this one's got more power than the last time, or some crazy brake horsepower per ton figure. But like you said, they just communicate everything, and also the layout is really friendly. Like if you've driven mid-engine stuff and you go to something like a Caterham, you're like, oh, this is not so bad. This is okay. Like it's moving around and it's not that much of an issue.
Yeah, that's it. And isn't that a great feeling? The car moving around is a great feeling, yeah.
And definitely, I think a lot of people end up going down this route, and I've done this myself, where you're like, I would like to drive faster and grippier, and that's the sort of avenue I chose. But going from, for me, SR1 to SR3, which essentially like, it was basically a more stable car, but much more downforce. And then there was the transition to slicks and wets, which for anyone out there that's considering changing to slicks and wets from a normal tire, it's one of the most expensive things you can do. Like the change from going from a normal road type tire all the time to slicks and wets, it's very expensive, isn't it?
So one of the sort of principles in Caterham Racing is built on, Caterham Motorsport is built on, is really about value. And, in a crude way, I say it's more of a sort of pile-em high racing. We want as many people racing rather than a few people racing and extracting as much revenue out of that racing as we possibly can. So that does make us unusual, because achieving a mass of people is actually a harder task. Last year we had over 200 registered drivers. It makes us the largest factory back series in the UK.
Yeah.
Possibly in Europe as well, in fact. But keeping the cost low is ever so important, and that's why we run on these tyres. We could run slicks and wets, but all that's going to do, everyone's going to be in the same boat, performance-wise. They're just going to be spending more money. So we don't want to go down that route. The other thing we didn't mention earlier on is the level of support we provide, which is unusual as well. So we take a truck full of parts and a team of technicians from the factory and from our other workshops to every race meeting to look after the guys in Academy and Road Sport. Others can have it, it's not optional. But they're there to keep people racing all weekend long, and it's included.
Okay.
Racing, there's no such thing as cheap racing. It's good value racing for what you're spending, which is where we believe we are, but it's still never cheap. And the other biggest area is time. It takes a lot of time up. People are time poor. And so if they're committing a number of weekends, and there'll be a test day, there might be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the last thing they want is an accident on Friday morning, which ruins that weekend, and they can't do anything. It's
that's the worst.
Yeah, the money's annoying, but the loss of time is a really big deal for them. But because it's a nice, simple car, it's easy for us to put it back together and get it back out again. You can knock a corner off a Caterham and you'll be back racing again. And if you're lucky, you won't miss a session of your test day.
Nice.
Drivers try. It's like a challenge to empty the parts truck on a Friday, but and the team take pride in getting people out and not losing that time. We'll do engine changes and gearbox changes and lose various bits and pieces.
What's the quickest you've done like something big like an engine change?
It's not very quick actually. One of the issues with Caterham is it's very small. You might have noticed.
Yeah.
And so packaging is difficult. Okay. So getting the engine out is actually a bit of a pain. We do it. Well, actually, getting the gearbox out is far worse because the engine has to come out to get the gearbox out as well. We've done a gearbox change in about an hour and 10 minutes, which is not fast by any means, but in Caterham terms,
that sounds pretty quick.
In Caterham terms, it's very rapid. The entire engine out, dismantled, gearbox out, new gearbox in. Back. And in that time, it can be the time between sessions on a track day and someone's back out, or on a test day and someone's back out again.
Yeah.
And with those major parts, we've tried to keep the costs as low as possible as well. So when we talk about the engines in Academy, Road Sport, 270, and even 310, which has our own cams in, we do as little to the engine as we possibly can. We are a tiny company. We have a very limited development budget. Ford is a massive company, and they will have spent hundreds of millions of dollars developing those engines over years. So who am I to know better than them? So if we can take it in its absolute standard format, although we're racing it and revving it high, we're not stressing it because you're pushing along a 500 kilo car rather than a 1500 kilo car, with 4 Germans and their luggage.
Big difference.
It does make a huge difference. So by using a standard engine, we keep the cost down. So I'm going to quote myself or say don't quote me, but a replacement engine is about £4,000.
That's very reasonable.
Which if you've been racing radical, you will know how reasonable that is. I think one of the challenges we have is that because we bring in novices in the academy and they don't know racing before, they probably don't know how cheap that is. And I have had conversations with
Yeah.
people that have said, I'm really sorry, your engine's it's just died. That's the end of that. You're going to need a new one. How much is that? It's about £4,000. 4,000. I've only been racing with that for 4 years. Yeah. The days of 20 hours on an engine and an 80, sort of £8,000 rebuild, long gone. We want to keep people out there racing for as long as possible and spending as little as possible, really.
That is such an important factor. And having, like you said, components, a Ford engine that you're not, do they rev a bit more or are they the same?
No, we do rev them higher. So we rev, we do rev both the variants, the Sigma and the Duratec that we use in the 420. We rev them higher, but to no ill effect.
And basically,
we don't. The rev limit in 420 is 7,400. So that's the higher of the two. And realistically, that's not very high. It's not the 89,000 highly strung that you could go to. There's just no benefit to us to do that.
And like you said, using an engine like that in a car that's very light, it's just the engine is just not stressed at all. In comparison to...
No, and compared to race engines of old or even a bespoke engine now, Ford have to comply to incredibly strict emission regulations in the UK and particularly in the States where they still have to comply after 100,000 miles.
Yeah.
So the engines are built for durability, so they don't wear out. Once upon a time, it used to be with the Rover K series and older engines in racing that a fresh engine was the best engine you could possibly have, and that's going to be its peak. Yeah? Now we encourage our drivers to get 1,000 miles on them first, because until then they'll be relatively tight. And, And I do remember when we went to Spa for the first time with the new series, it was probably about 2010, 2011, with this engine. The lap record was set with an engine over 200 hours on it. That's nice. 20 times, 10 times what the old rebuild average would have been.
Yeah, that's such a great, from like an owner point of view, if you're getting in, all of these costs, just keeping them down, because invariably motorsport is more expensive than anyone wants it to be. It
is, and it's diminishing returns. We have people coming back to us from GT racing, and they've had a good experience in GT racing. How would you not if you're going to race an Aston or a Lamborghini and big circuits and it's fast? So actually, once the novelty, it's bragging rights, a lot of it. Once that novelty is worn off and you get back to being about you as a driver, actually, Caterham racing was more fun.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. One of the guys I know who's done a bunch of radical racing. I've now done a lot less. I've basically stopped, but I still drive the car. He's gone back to, he's just bought an MX-5 and he's doing some MX-5 racing.
Yeah,
I've done a bunch of the Citroen C1 endurance races.
Yes, yeah.
And that is, it's like that going back and being like, okay, the car's slow and kind of a bit crap, but there's 150 people going flat out. Whereas when you're massively worried about your car and like, any damage is like a 10 grand bill or 20 grand bill or whatever, it's just a lot less fun, I think.
Yeah. So beginning of last year, we raced at Silverstone National, not the most exciting circuit in the world, but it provides good racing. And in the 270 race, so the third year on, we had a good grid of cars. So you've raced radical. If you went into the last lap of the race and you were 3 seconds behind the leader, how would you feel about that?
It's unlikely to catch them.
It's not bad though, is it?
Yeah. I'd be feeling good.
3 seconds behind the leader in that race was 27th place. So we had 8 races, and one race we had a runaway winner. Okay, if we push him to one side and forget that he did that, and add up the winning margin of the other 7 races, it came to 1.2 seconds.
Wow.
So a few years ago, I had to start paying for a finish line camera. Because we were having too many close finishes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's just great racing, and we're not alone. Mini racing is similarly close, but it's also back down in the club level, and people sort of overlook it for more glamorous series, which actually are nothing to watch in comparison.
Yeah. No, that sounds like a lot of fun. And I think having you've got your novices in year 1 and then they go on for next year, and that helps keep the racing closer up to a point, because people are still learning and you don't have just like a pro or you know, someone that's been doing it for 20 years who just is like 5 seconds a lap faster than everyone else.
No, and the Academy's been successful enough. You know, we sell 2 grids a year, so we sell 56 a year, for us to be turning people away regularly. When they say, well, I've only done one race, and we just say no to them, you know, and we'll try and slot them in further up. We don't want to lose them. We want to maintain that purity, because people come in at the same level, and you say it's a far more even playing field. And there will be some that are naturally better than others, for sure, and it will spread out over time. But it means that if you're entering racing, it's really hard to just jump into any other race series, because you are on the back foot in terms of experience and understanding of the car, and everyone around you doesn't know you. If you're racing against the same guys for a couple of years, you're progressing in speed and your own experience, but you know what the other drivers do, because everyone behaves differently on track. And you can understand if they're going to go for that corner, where they're going to do it, or do they outbrake themselves a lot? All those sorts of things you build up. Yeah. And it makes for better racing.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. Just knowing the people, knowing the liabilities, the guys that just steaming. It looks like a great series. So what does a weekend look like from your point of view? Like, what do you have to do on a weekend?
A lot of walking, mostly. A lot of walking. I'm usually hoarse at the end of the weekend, you know. Fortunately for me, I have a really good team, and everyone's really invested in it. Academy, we talk about Academy a lot. We believe it's as an overall product, it's the best thing that Caterham does. Yeah, and we get a huge amount of satisfaction out of it, of turning people into racing drivers. So everyone's really invested in it. So I'm there for when things go a bit wrong. Otherwise, it operates quite happily without me. So I tend to spend my time just wandering around, talking to various drivers, and just seeing what's happening and how can we do things a bit better. You know, where can we improve? Where do you want to go for the future? Yeah. So my role most of the time is probably the easiest, the least stressed, you know, but it is long days. We will start, you know, at reasonable time, probably 7 a.m. But if we're fixing cars for the following day, we'll be there till midnight. And you can have 2 or 3 days of that, 25,000 steps or whatever. It does get tiring. Yeah. Sunday night, you've had enough.
Yeah, I'm always amazed at the amount I end up walking on a race weekend. Not massively when I'm a driver, but if I'm like a photographer or something like that, you're just dead, like wandering around, seeing everyone, walking up and down the track.
So you end up being quite hoarse as well, you know. Yeah. And the adrenaline flows when you're watching racing as well. You know, if there's action on track, you can get quite nervous about it as to what's going to happen. And if there is an incident as well, obviously that's concerning. We have our fair share of bumps, wings come off quite a lot, but fortunately, you know, nothing too serious. But it's always in the back of your mind.
Yeah. Are any tracks worse than others for incidents? Just from like a layout / I don't know, somewhere like Cadwell Parks, there's not a lot of runoff.
Well, as I said earlier on, we take a truck full of parts to a circuit. Yeah, I used to tell people there's about 150 grand's worth of parts in there, but actually, depending on your background, that doesn't sound like a lot. If you're radical racing, you know, it's a handful of parts. It's a lot of Caterham parts. You know? So we can see what we sell over a weekend, and then track that over the years to see which circuits are the best and which are the worst. And it's not what people think. So most people will point to Alton Park as being the circuit that's going to cause the most damage or whatever. But actually, it seems to be the ones that have a culmination of smaller accidents. And Snetterton 300 is that's the one that seems to empty the truck the quickest. But it's very, very popular with the drivers. Everyone really loves it. Yeah. You know? They're always concerned about circuits that might cause damage, or Alton Park, you know, that's risky, or Cadwell Park. But actually, it's other ones that cause more bother.
Yeah, that's weird. What do you think? So, where do people go wrong at Snetterton, or do people just get so excited they bump into each other?
It's one of those circuits where the racing's fairly close. You know, I have some good images of people crossing the line together, and I think it just enables close racing, and that's it. You can get tangled up with each other.
Yeah, and there's lots of areas where people probably try overtakes that you're like, probably.
Well, when you're in a non-aero car that's as small as a Caterham is, there are a lot more overtaking opportunities than might otherwise be written down in the book. You know, so you can go for almost anything if you like.
Yeah, I guess because you can get like 4 cars wide in the width of like 2 normal GT style cars or something like that.
Yes, you can fit more cars across the track as well as around the track. But aero plays the slipstream and the toe, they play a very big part in our racing. And you've got two decent length straights there as well.
So people don't get any bump drafting.
Not bump draft. Well, we say not bump drafting. Yeah, it's but you do get very close, and it has an appreciable effect, especially on the Academy road sport cars with windscreens. It's even stronger then.
Do a lot of drivers? I know the beginning they have to. Do most drivers do all the work on their cars?
It is a mix. Through Academy and road sport, we demand it to a degree. Yeah. We're there to support them with the big bits, but we believe it makes them a better driver if they understand the car. And what's happening to the car, and they can learn around the car, and we can talk about anti-roll bar settings and all these various bits and pieces. And it also stops someone just coming and throwing lots of money at a team, which would dissuade other drivers. They're probably not going to get any advantage because the regulations are really quite tight. As you move up through racing, there are a number of really good Caterham race teams, but they're there more to offer a convenience service, almost like an arrive and drive, rather than having to check the fuel yourself and all those horrible things that you have to do. So it's more about comfort than anything else.
Yeah, totally. Do you limit testing?
I would love to limit testing. That would be great because, for me, the perfect world would be that you turn up at a circuit and take your car out of a blister pack completely fresh and everyone's exactly the same. But in reality, testing is very popular. It seems to be the thing that people like to do the most. So there is a mix. But you can be assured that if there's a Caterham race at a weekend, the test day beforehand, probably 2 test days, will be full.
Yeah. I think it's one of my favourite parts of the weekend is like Friday testing. Because you get a lot of time in the car to just, actually work on your driving. Whereas when you're racing, you're dealing with the racing part of it. I was just going to say, I remember when I started out, there was one guy, and we were all meant to be novices. And there was one guy that was like 8 seconds a lap faster than everyone else or something. And I'm like, how the hell is he that fast? And they're like, oh, yeah, he's done like 40 test days.
Yeah.
40. Like what? What the hell?
So, undoubtedly time in the car makes a very big difference, and it'll bring you as a driver up to your appropriate level of ability. But it's not everything. It doesn't matter how many tennis lessons I have now, I'm never going to beat Roger Federer. I accept that, But it's different with cars. Very few people want to accept that they are a bad driver.
Yeah.
Or not the best driver in the world. Everyone thinks they're a great driver. It's one of the things we say to Academy people, actually, is when you enter the Academy, you've always acknowledged that by doing that you're not the best driver in the world and you've got somewhere to learn. One of our poster boys of Academy from a few years back now, about 4 years ago, is a guy called Steve Tozer. And Steve came to the Academy having done one track day. It was actually a birthday experience. I think his other half had bought it.
Nice.
And the instructor, he just got into a chat, and the instructor happened to be an ex-Academy driver. That's how he started. I don't know who it was. But he went back, Googled it, and that was it. They had to do that before they bought a house. And he did his Academy year. They were sleeping in the back of the trailer. They did one test day before the events. They couldn't do anything else. And they're up against people that have got incredibly deep pockets. To be fair, there was a huge mix of financial capability on the grid. But Steve won. Nice. The least experience, the least budget on the grid. There's no doubt about that. But he won because he was a naturally talented guy. And you can't buy your way into more talent. You can just bring your experience up to the appropriate level. Everyone will get there in time. Pete Walters, who's one of our top drivers, when he started in the Academy, he was sort of midfield, but you can see him creeping up and up and up. And we tipped him for a win at the end of the year, which he actually did. The next year, dominated the series. His racing gets the same. It just took him a little while to get to his speed, which happens to be faster than everyone else. But you're not there instantly.
Yeah. If you were speccing Caterham, sorry, this is a slight diversion, or what would you spec? What would be, you think, like the go-to must-have, or you don't need that? Where would you sit?
It's difficult for me. Obviously, I have my own Caterham, and I have had one for 25 years, if you like, along the way. And I choose a 420R. That's really because of my track experience. So I'm happy with the car with that power and it moving around underneath. I'm confident enough with that. I prefer it to the 620R, which is incredibly fast. But you end up, certainly on track days, you just, on the straights, you drive up behind the next car and have to follow them around the corner.
Yeah.
So I feel that the 420 is a good compromise there. It still feels really, really fast, but not so fast that you're obliterating everything else from running your day. It's set up for oversteer, so it's not the fastest round the track by any means. Other people give me a hard time, but
Set
I
up
want
for
it
smiles.
exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm there, is to enjoy myself. Not looking for every 10th anymore. I've long given up racing. The problem is actually I want 2 or 3 Caterhams. I can only afford one, and I've only got space for one in my garage. But I came that close to buying the Super Sprint when we did that as a special edition,
Right,
with the 100 horsepower Suzuki engine in. I was really torn as to whether I should sell my 420 and have that instead.
what was so special about that car?
Everything we talked about earlier on the 7160. It's got an extra 20 horsepower and a limited slip diff, so it's just amazing fun. It's ridiculous fun at relatively low speeds.
Yeah,
and the sort of period look we gave it, the 1960s look, it just looks really cool as well. I think it was the project was largely my baby in the first place, so I was quite sort of emotionally attached to it. But no, I stuck with the 420, and actually I've had the current one for 4 years. It's well overdue a replacement now. but it would mean picking another colour.
Okay.
And that is the hardest thing in the world, is what colour to paint your car.
It is.
Oh god, yeah. You can have a Caterham in any colour you like.
Well, that's something I would say is particularly good about Caterhams, is you can pretty much put them in any colour, whereas a lot of cars you can't do that.
No, most you've got a select list to choose from, and some will paint them for any colour for a huge amount more. But you can paint your car any colour you like. Now, a lot of customers go down that path, and you'd think that the best paint colours in the world are made by Porsche, Ferrari and Lamborghini, because that's all they ever choose. And you can tell the staff cars, because there'll be a different colour, but mine's a Citroen colour. And one of the other guys will have a Toyota colour or anything. Because we are a bit more focused on the colour itself. But it's the hardest thing in the world is picking a colour, because we see so many cars go through the factory to try and do something different from what you've seen before. There are some great colour cars, don't get me wrong, I do really like them. But everyone wants their Caterham to be individual. Yeah. And that's as true for us as it is for them. So, you always look for something different.
What colour is your car at the moment?
Mine is, the right name, I think, is Citroen Blue Lagoon. So it's the Citroen Cactus Greeny Blue.
Is it like a light greeny blue?
It's like a light greeny blue, yes. Yeah.
Cool.
With the white stripes over it. I think it looks great. Yeah. It
sounds like a good colour combo to me. I do like blues. And I think light colours on Caterhams are good.
Yeah, it varies. I think the next one could well be a grey. I know it's quite also on trend now, if you like, but I've seen a lot of grey colours. And mini white silver, that's a great colour as well.
Okay,
I think I've only done one car so far in that colour, and I'd really like to see more of those. What often happens, though, is we'll do a press car. If we have a press car that's particularly successful for one reason or another, you'll see a run of that colour. So the first 620 we built was Porsche Riviera Blue with orange stripe over it.
Yeah.
You may even remember it in the press, And we have done so many of those.
Yeah.
Its predecessor was the white R500 with red stripes that was on Top Gear.
I remember that.
Yeah. When that James that picked the colour for that car, he said, we'll do a white press car. He knew I'd like it. I like white Caterhams, and I'm unusual in that way. He said, it'd be something different. You never see a white car go down the line, which is absolutely right. White Caterhams, as rare as you like.
Yeah.
After that, every 10th car, yeah. So you're always trying to look for something a little bit different, but not too wild. It needs to sell at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. Different. So what are the different gearbox options? Are most just an H pattern, or just are most an H pattern, and then you can have a sequential in some of the cars?
Put in a Suzuki gearbox, a Suzuki engine car aside, which is actually discontinued at the moment. We have one gearbox, which is a 5-speed. It's an MX-5 gearbox, and then the casing is bespoke to Caterham, so there's a few bits, but otherwise that's what it is. We used to have a 6-speed gearbox. It was developed for the 1.4 K series engine, which had no torque, and it needed the 6 gears. But the Sigma, and particularly the Duratec, they're such torquey engines. We found that the 6-speed, you were having 6 gears for the sake of it, and actually you're getting a better drive from having 5 gears. And you're not having to stir the gearbox so much. Yeah. Some people feel that sort of takes something away, but when they drive the 5-speed, they realise that actually changing gears all the time becomes a little bit annoying. In fact, so that's what we stick with. And you can have the 6-speed sequential, which is a SADEV gearbox.
Yeah, That's the next one that I've been trying to get going. I haven't driven a 620, and I'd like to try a 620 with a sequential just to get that.
Yeah, driving 620. Every Caterham provides a slightly different experience. From the bottom up. And when you get to the 620 again, it is an entirely different experience. It's the next step up from the 420, but in terms of speed, it's just out. It's like being fired out of a gun. And you find yourself just slowing down and doing that acceleration thing repeatedly, and then just laughing and then doing it again. I'm up through the gears. It's great. We could have paddle shift. Paddle shift can be a bit flaky unless you go for an electronic type, but that's probably not as engaging as being able to pull a lever. For me, driver engagement and the sense of experience is a really big thing.
Yeah.
If I have getting in our car anyway, you have to put the full harness on and all this. If I had my way, you'd be flicking up switches to turn the fuel pumps on and all sorts. It's just to really get that sense of what's going on.
Yeah.
When you get in a car now, you don't even have to put a key in. You just get in and press start, and it starts without.
Yeah.
It's convenient, but is it actually better?
Not for. I'm firmly in the view of you should probably be rowing your own gears. If you're driving a car on the road, on track, I'm sort of in between. I could have paddles. I could have a sequential gearbox. I could have a manual.
The most important thing in the world, as far as I'm concerned, about having a manual gearbox, certainly on track, is the ability to heel and tow.
Yes.
It's a lost art. A lot of people don't even know what it is. If you can do it, and it does take quite a lot of practice, it is a skill. And in the Caterham, it is really easy. That's one of the great things. There's nothing more satisfying. You feel like a 1960s or 1970s Grand Prix driver if you can do these perfect downshifts. They sound great. They feel great. Your passenger wonder what the hell you managed to just do there. I say our car just lends itself to it. So you end up practicing and everything else you drive as a manual, which is far more difficult. And then when you jump into our car, it's great.
I've always found it in the last 2 Caterhams I've driven really difficult. The spacing on the pedals, and I don't know whether there's a difference between wide chassis car. Do you do a wide chassis and a narrow chassis car?
We do, yes. Yeah, we do 2 different sizes. I refer to it as it's a bit like buying shoes. You buy the size that fits.
And I think one was like a book a track rental car that I drove, and I asked them about it, and I think what they'd done is they'd spaced them so that people wouldn't accidentally mash the throttle when they hit the brake, but it actually made it impossible to reach the throttle pedal.
Yeah.
And I guess with all the pedal box, are they all adjustable?
Well, that's the thing. It's adjustable with spanners, but it doesn't take very long to take the pedal box cover off and play around with it and move the throttle pedal around or move the brake up and down to get what suits you, because we all have different size feet and we all do it in a slightly different way as well. But yes, it's one of the first things I do in the car is get the pedals. I'm quite a pedal prima donna, actually. My engineers will tell you that, but get them set up for me so that I can heel and tow properly. So you tune it to yourself, and that's what you want in the car.
It's nice having a car that you can actually do that. Because most cars you get in now, if the pedals are in the wrong place, they're in the wrong place. That's it, you're stuck.
Oh, yeah. I don't really know of any other road car where you can say, I just want to adjust the pedals to suit me a little bit better. Yeah. It doesn't really happen, does it?
You can drive them with shoes or without shoes. Those are your 2 options.
Yeah.
So my experience of driving Caterhams on the road, I very quickly get overexcited and start driving a little bit like a lunatic. And it's one of... I think it's quite unique as an experience of a car that, as far as I'm aware, everyone I know that's driven a Caterham on the road and has got some sort of idea of what the hell they're doing ends up driving a little bit sideways, a little bit like a hooligan. Every single T-junction, you're like, yeah, okay, give it some. Do you think that's a unique Caterham thing? Do you find that when you drive a Caterham?
Obviously not. I drive within the limits of the car and law at all times.
So my follow-up question is, have you ever found yourself facing the wrong way?
Not the wrong way. I have to be very careful about what I say, obviously. But
maybe the odd reverse.
No. I think that comes down to, I wouldn't say it's driving like a hooligan. That comes down to how easy it is to do it in the car and control it. If you've been driving lots of very powerful cars, you're going to try and power slide a 911 out of a turning or something. It's going to be a lot of drama. It's going to happen very quickly, and it's going to take up a lot of road. Whereas it's much easier in a 7, isn't it? And you can do it sort of quietly and discreetly and get away with it, and even stay on the same side of the road. Not that I'm saying that I've done that every single time I drive the car every day. Yeah.
And yeah, like full lock in a Caterham is just, you just
Yeah,
that's it.
We do different steering racks actually. So there's faster ones, but I'm a fan of a relatively slow steering rack, which is fast in the Caterham, but it gives you a bit more finesse and a bit more control. Particularly if you're doing laps or a roundabout sideways in a closed environment.
Yeah, on your test day.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and not in front of a plainclothes policeman who then stops you and tells you off.
No, that would be
an embarrassing day. Yeah.
So when just one thing, when you're setting up a car, so someone's got their new Caterham of whatever sorts, and they take it on a track day. Do most Caterhams have adjustable suspension?
All the R models do. So we have S and R. Those letters were arbitrarily chosen over one long day. And you could think of them as sort of street and race. One's a soft car and one's more track orientated. So all the R's do. And the S, a lot of people will have that as an option. It's not adjustable in the way you think about it. It's adjustable in terms of corner weights, ride height, and the anti-roll bars.
Okay.
But that does allow you to tune the car to you in a way that you can't do with other road cars.
How would you go about setting up a car from zero? Like, let's say you've taken delivery of a car, you've gone to the track, you've driven around once, and you're like, okay, I'd like to play with this. How would you go about that process?
The hardest thing there is it depends on the driver feedback. Everyone drives differently. You get this misconception there is a perfect setup for a Caterham, and someone will try and sell that to you. This is what the driver won last year on, this perfect setup. And we know that's a complete red herring. And if you go and look in the garage at a Grand Prix at the two Red Bulls, they will be set up differently for the two different drivers, yet they're achieving lap times within 100th of a second of each other, and one's winning one weekend, one's winning another, because people drive differently. So when I talk to people about this, you really need to find out how they drive, which is quite hard because a lot of people don't know, and it takes something like the academy for them to understand their own driving technique.
Yeah.
But perhaps the easiest thing we can do is with those cars with the adjustable spring platforms is they can rock up to one of their dealers and have a flat floor setup, which isn't a flat floor in the car as most people think it is. It's just done on a flat surface. It will corner weight the car and basically even it out. A car isn't symmetrical. It might look like that from the outside, but the engine isn't, the components aren't, there's exhaust on one side. And in a 500 kilo car, when you get in one side of it and sit on one side, you've thrown that right off. Yeah. But you're able to tune the car so that the center of gravity is effectively in the center of the car, and it will react to the left and to the right in the same ways. And that will allow you to go from there. But if you've got adjustable platforms, you can raise and lower the rear ride height really easily. You can do it in 5 minutes at a track day, and that allows you to tune the handling at the circuit. On a track day, you can change the setup of the car to suit your driving. Again, not many other cars you can do that on. Yeah, certainly none that you can drive to the circuit and back again.
Yeah, that's it. Do the academy people drive to the circuit?
Well, we like to think they do, and one or two do, but reality is that if you want to take a few tools and some of the family, then a tow car and trailer is the way to do it. Some people start that way, others are more determined and will carry on through the year, but most people trailer it. Yeah, I think it provides a sense of security in many ways, but it's just convenience. Yeah,
that like worst case scenario, you're always getting home.
You're always getting home. It doesn't matter if you didn't trailer to the circuit. We will get you home. We'll get you and your car back regardless. Oh, yeah, nice. we want to encourage people to drive the car, because it's those that do drive their cars a lot of the time tend to do well because they're really familiar with the car. Now, if you've driven a Caterham and then jump back into a normal road car, the two are really alien. The steering is enormously different and the pedal feels very, very different as well. So every time you get into a Caterham, you're sort of relearning that. If you're only doing it every race meeting and not using the car in between on the road, you're sort of putting yourself at a bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, I can totally see that. You can log more seat time.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and it doesn't matter where it is. It's just familiarity with the car.
Yeah, you're way less likely to fluff a gear change or something like that if you've done it 50,000 times.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Did you have something to do with the Lego Caterham?
Maybe. You're revealing darker secrets here. Yes. The Lego Caterham, again, yes.
Was that a fun project?
So Carl Gidricks, who originally designed it with Lego Ideas, I don't know if you know the Lego Ideas platform. It's this thing Lego create. Yeah, you wouldn't unless you're a kind of Lego geek, which tells you what I am. Yeah. A few years ago, Lego came up with this idea, which is now called Lego Ideas, where people could submit an idea.
Okay.
And every quarter they would, they'd put them on a website and people could vote them. And if they got enough votes, they'd collect them all together and decide whether one of them was worth producing.
Okay.
And they've done that with quite a few models now, actually. Carl built a Lego 7 and he contacted me through Motorsport. He said, I know your name through Motorsport. I can't even remember how. But I wonder, he tried to explain the Lego Ideas platform and could we help? I said, don't worry, I know all about it. House is full of Lego. I'm really sorry. So I explained it to the marketing team. Of course, we helped promote it a little bit. We thought it was a great thing. We got sufficient votes for it to be considered.
Yeah.
And then Lego phoned us up and said, we don't have Caterham here in Denmark because the tax is too high. Can you tell us a bit more about it? So I went on a bit of a charm offensive about the car and all its history and all those sorts of things and sent them some information through and had quite a lot of chats with them. And we ended up bringing the Lego Caterham to market with them.
Nice.
Which was really, really good. Really, it was exciting for us. They are the world's biggest toy manufacturer. There is something like 20 Lego Caterhams for every real Caterham in existence.
That's quite fun. Presumably you have one.
They gave me one very early in the program, so I think I was probably the first person outside of Lego to actually build one. Yeah.
That must be a really cool thing.
When you're involved in the process right from the beginning, Carl's idea was great, and then you sit down with the designers and they're telling you his model's good, but it can't really be played with. It needs to be a bit more robust, so we're going to redesign it. And then you're talking about the colours as well. So Carl was quite a sort of old school Lotus fan and wanted to see it in green and yellow, which is that's heritage, but it's not Caterham anymore. Yeah. It hasn't been for coming up for 50 years. We'd like to have had it blue and orange, like the Caterham 620 press car, because that was a big thing at the time. But Lego said we have a car in that colour coming out very shortly, which was the Volkswagen Beetle. I didn't know.
Okay, yeah.
So then we had to sort of decide what colour would look best and most striking. So we actually took one of our press cars and wrapped it yellow and put black stripes over it and said, what do you think to that? So that it's using the existing colour you've got. It really stands out. It doesn't compete with any of the other models you've got. And they said, yeah, that's fantastic. We'll go with that. Yeah. So you end up with a lot of dealings to and fro between Legos of the drawings and bits and pieces and detail. And is this okay? And what do you think to that? It was a great experience, and to actually see it come and those boxes turn to reality was a fantastic thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so cool. I've sort of recently rediscovered Lego Technic, I used a lot of Lego when I was younger, and then sort of forgot about it for a long time. Yeah. And then have started building some of the Lego Technic stuff recently, and just trying to work out how I can either sell them once they're done, or just do something so that I can buy more, build more, but not just have this ever-growing pile of large, small vehicles. Yeah,
that is the challenge. That they can get quite big. Yeah, and they do take up a lot of space,
But yeah, they are cool, and you can have them inside as well.
Yeah.
Future-wise, see, Caterham Racing is slightly independent, I guess, from the road cars. But with everything going electric and all that sort of stuff, Caterham moving forward, it seems like in a little bit of a difficult position.
I don't think so. We're probably no different to the rest of the car industry in that respect, in that EVs are very, very expensive to make. So they are, whilst they're more expensive to buy currently, they are artificially cheap. Yeah. Now, if you'd said to me 3 years ago, will there be an electric Caterham? I probably was, very silly. We're jumping on the bandwagon. I think the world's moved a long way since then, or in a very, very short period of time. Yeah. We will look back in time, I think, and thank Elon Musk for it as well. Tesla has made electric cars not just acceptable, but desirable in a very short period of time, much quicker than they otherwise would. But one of the nice things about being here is that we get to experience other bits of the industry. We sit on industry bodies and some technology boards, all sorts of things. And whilst we're not necessarily playing an active part, we're absorbing all this information all the time. And we get to drive some prototype electric vehicles too. An electric Caterham is a really interesting concept. When you think about driving a car like that on track, I think your mind automatically switches to an automatic. Well, I've lost my gears. It won't be as good.
Yeah.
It's not like a sequential. Yeah? It'll be like an automatic that's choosing the gears for me. But it's not. With an electric motor, you've got 100% of the torque all of the time. So as soon as you put your foot on the throttle, it responds in exactly the way you want it to. Yeah. So I'd say it's almost like you're in the perfect gear all the time.
Yeah.
So if you drive one on track, you drive a track-focused EV car. There are not very many. I have had that experience, unfortunately. Yeah. You find that actually it's more like driving a go-kart in that you've just got two pedals. And you quickly just start braking with your left foot, which if you've been racing radical, you're probably left foot braking already. Do some left foot. So you end up just having your 2 feet over the pedals, and you've got to go and you've got to stop. And you're focused on just that and steering. And you think back about gears, you're not missing anything. That's just an inconvenience to get you where you want to go.
Yeah.
And the drive experience in many ways becomes a bit more pure. So I think that an electric Caterham could actually be an amazing car to drive. Mm. We would love to do it. We'd love to push that project forward. The problem is just the costs at the moment, unfortunately. They're prohibitive to make it a commercially viable product. So you talk about the bill of materials of the car, all the parts that go up to make it. The general industry acceptance is on an EV, 50% of the cost of all the parts that go up to make an electric car is just the battery alone.
Okay, yeah. So presumably with that though, because let's say most Caterhams are about 500 kilos. Mm. If you were to do an electric Caterham, like with your power plants, you don't need a massively powerful engines, and you wouldn't need massive battery packs as well. Like you wouldn't need a 100 kilowatt hour big pack like you might get in a Tesla or something, because you're only moving a lighter weight. I guess it depends on because the motors is still going to be quite heavy and quite big, and then the power pack is big. Well, the battery pack is big, heavy, I guess, as well. Yeah,
there's no getting away from the weight being an issue. And our product is built on being lightweight. That pays dividends across the board with it. But you're right, we probably only need something like a 40 kilowatt hour battery, and a range that's around 150 miles is what people get on a petrol tank already. Yeah. And most journeys are just a little day out or just going somewhere and then recharge, and that may well be acceptable. And likewise, performance-wise, EVs are going to make 0 to 60 kind of irrelevant.
Yeah, they're all the same.
They are. It's how fast do you want to get to 60, and we'll just reduce the range accordingly and go as fast as you like. So it just comes back about the experience again. And we say, well, if you can get 0 to 60 miles an hour in 5 seconds, something like that, like you can now in a Sigma-powered car, that's fast enough for everyone all the time. Apart from that one time you want to be blasted back in your seat. Yeah. And as long as you can get to 100 miles an hour or so, that's probably more than enough. So that's my personal opinion, is it doesn't need to be mind-shattering in terms of actual outright performance. It just needs to deliver the same experience in performance terms as a moderate 7, and you'll enjoy it. But actually, I think it could actually make a better car.
Yeah, it could be interesting. I think the car I drove recently, I drove an Elise recently, and it had the world's quietest exhaust on it. And essentially, I realised that I just wasn't hearing much engine when I was driving. But that was a really interesting experience, because you could then hear all 4 tyres pretty much. And you can hear all of the way the car is handling the road, and how the tyres are working. Whereas if you've got a really loud engine, obviously it can sound great, but you can't hear all of these things. And it makes it a sort of almost like a more pure driving experience.
Yeah, that is the one thing that we will lose is the engine noise, and there's no substitute for that. But I think maybe in time what you find is that people, a younger generation coming up through cars, won't listen to engine noise as being a wonderful thing, but actually as a noise. And that if you remove that noise, it's a more pleasant experience. But as you say, you can hear other bits of the car, which is a bit worrying from time to time. You don't want to hear what's squeaking. It's safer just to listen to the engine.
Yeah. That random rattle that you can never find.
That's right.
I think that's one of the biggest problems with electric cars they have at the moment, is reducing all of these weird noises.
Yeah, they're otherwise masked by the engine noise. But if you pull the carpets up in your car, you'll just find the amount of soundproofing in there is phenomenal. It's something we don't have.
Yeah. You're just like a couple of inches on the floor.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I normally wrap these up with 5 questions. Are you ready?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, okay, we'll give it. We'll give it a shot. Yeah.
Do you have a most memorable driving trip or journey?
Yeah, there's so many things going through my mind, particularly from that period from about 18 to 19 that we probably best not discussed. I think the first experience of the Nürburgring, which was in a Caterham, that was very memorable. But that trip, we actually drove to the Alps and back in sevens. Yeah,
nice.
Which was really good fun. Over all the mountain passes. The first time we did that, driving through a herd of cows with big horns that weren't very happy in a Caterham was probably one of the most frightening things I've ever done in my life.
That sounds pretty fun. Of all the sort of driving trips I've done, it's been the ones that have seemed like they should be a bit challenging that have been the most memorable. If it's just some modern whatever, it's never that interesting. But when you think you might not get there,
and we talked earlier on about this, the sense of occasion, the experience. What I'd like to do when I get in the car. Sat nav has kind of ruined road trips. Because you're going to get there and you're going to find a place at the end of it. And it wasn't a lot more fun when you weren't really sure.
Yeah, you had to take a bit more time because you could legit get lost. That's just what happens.
It was an adventure. Going on holiday to Devon was an adventure.
Yeah. And then you stop at, a petrol station or you're like, which way to this? And the person goes, well, you turn right here and then left and then right. Like, okay, well, that's it. I'm lost again now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Cool. Next question. 5-car garage, unlimited value.
5.
You can have a race car, road cars, whatever you like. What sort of fit into your life?
My Euro Millions car would be a Lamborghini Miura. That's relatively easy. I already have a Caterham.
Yeah.
I think something like probably a 250 GT short wheelbase. Yeah.
What colour? Since you're quite specific about colours, actually, what colour is the Miura as well?
The orange with the black lower. A ratio. I can't remember the actual the name. But it's got to be. It's
the orange one. Yeah.
I do, as much as I love Ferrari, I feel the red ones are a little bit of a cliche, but I think you 100%. Might get away with it on a 60s car, on a 66. That might be all right. Yeah.
I think that's all right. You got 3.
Then that's 3, isn't it?
What's your daily in this scenario?
What's my daily? Well, that would change a lot. I'm struggling. I have an Alfa Stelvio. And I think if I had more budget, I'd have the Quattro unpronounceable version of that. Yeah. I love it. It's an absolutely fantastic car. It's rarely let me down. But you've
got one more slot.
Okay. That should be relatively easy. Actually, we already have that in some ways. We have a Jeep Wrangler, Rubicon, quite big into off-roading. And there is talk of upgrading that to the new one as well. Yeah. I think we would go with that as the new Defender is quite interesting, but I've got a soft spot for Jeeps.
For the Jeeps, have you got any funny off-roading stories in that?
I don't know. Funny. I don't know if they're necessarily. I'll tell you what, they weren't funny at the time. I do remember a trip to Wales. With a local group, we were in our Land Cruiser at the time, and some of the track gave away.
Oh wow!
It gave way on the car in front, but we thought we would be okay to get across. Yeah, everyone's out the cars, and we weren't. And I ended up with a winch attached to the front of my car and to the back of the car behind. We had to remove all the valuables from the car, and I had to have the driver's door open as we moved in case I needed to bail out if it rolled off the side of the cliff.
Wow.
So that was quite nerve-wracking. That was quite
memorable.
Yeah.
That's a good story.
But we went to Moab in Utah last year, hired a Jeep Wrangler and did some of the off-roading around there, and that's just one of the best driving experiences ever. That's just out of this world.
That sounds wicked. I definitely want to do some more off-roading things because it's just fun and it's totally different to.
It's very different. Yeah, it's absolutely very different. Yeah.
Right, if you could only drive one car for the rest of your life, sports car, what would it be? You're allowed like a £500 other thing on the side for family luggage, whatever.
Oh, well, obviously, it says Caterham here, isn't it? people might be listening. You never know.
Maybe not.
Yeah. Do you know what? I would go with some kind of 4x4. Probably stick with the Jeep again.
Yeah.
I know they're a little bit antisocial, but that's why I drive an SUV every day. The high driving position, the practicality, they're far more versatile. Saloon cars don't actually make sense. Why do you want to sit on the floor in a slightly uncomfortable position with your feet out like that? And a boot which you can't put anything in.
You work for, right?
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, but that's specific for a purpose. But a saloon car just doesn't make sense. It doesn't do any of the things it sets out to do particularly well compared to other ways, which is sort of sitting up a little bit.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, you could lean towards the sort of Renault Espace vibe.
You could, but then you could still walk, and walking might be preferable.
Yeah,
I think that there's also that feeling when you're driving a decent four-wheel drive, a proper one. There's a kind of, I won't say invincibility against accidents, but should the zombie apocalypse happen, you're going to make it out.
Yeah, true.
That's great. It doesn't matter what emergency befalls you. We have to be in Scotland tonight across that field. It's okay. And you just, when you're driving around in these things, that's how you feel.
Yeah, totally. And one of those things that I always get slightly jealous of is whenever I see a 4x4 parking and they just bump up over the curb, back down again. Like, what? I can't do that in my car. Ruin the rims.
We do that probably more than is utterly necessary because it's good. Yeah, you can just drive straight over curbs and do U-turns across the bumps in the centre, yes.
Yeah, or you're in a car park and you want to get to the other side of the car park and you're like, oh, just go over here. Boom,
just
boom,
go
boom.
across car. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. What do you think is the best valued car for under 50 grand?
Wow, I can't say I pay a huge amount of attention to it. Yeah.
Or most undervalued car at the moment?
I don't want to be a cliche. I would say the best value car under 50 grand is an Academy car and the Academy package. If you are a car nut, if you are a car person, the experience you will get out of that is like no other. Yeah. And at the end of the year, when we have our awards dinner and people have a reasonable amount to drink, every year, and I think it was about 3 people said to me this year, this was the best thing I've ever done in my life. From a job point of view, nothing gets better than that.
Yeah.
But you're making dreams come true. Otherwise, undervalued, I really would struggle to answer.
I think that's a good point you made, though. Yes, you can, let's say, buy a car, but to get value out of a car, there's one that's just like monetary, you don't lose too much. But there's another huge side of it is the experience you get out from owning that car. And like you said, you do something like the Academy, the experience you get out of that is massive, and the memories you will have forever. And
it's a lifetime experience. No one will regret it, And the residual value is quite good. So actually it doesn't cost you that much at the end of the day, but that's the best thing. Otherwise, in terms of sort of undervalued or people are too quick to go and buy something that might make sense. One of my colleagues is selling his Cayman.
Yep.
And I think he wants under 12 grand for it. And it looks $1 million, and you could own that and you put a private plate on it if you're that way inclined. No one would ever know, and you'll feel good about it.
You've got a great car.
You feel you've made it in yourself. You've owned a Porsche. Everyone should own, if you're a car nut, everyone should own one of the big brands at some point in their life. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, no, there's a lot to be said to that. Right, final question. What is the most interesting car to you at the moment? What are you looking up? What are you Googling? What are you going, This is when you're like, we have a new blah, 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 coming out tomorrow.
I was talking about Caterham. You'd be surprised. I don't get home and Google Caterhams. Some weekends I open a garage and go out for a drive, and other weekends you open the garage and go, and close it back up again. I never want to see another one in my life. Yeah. Well, it's like the hardest question ever. I don't spend a lot of time Googling other cars.
Fair enough.
Perhaps it's one of the negatives of working here is that other things don't interest you.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can drive other cars that they don't give you the same experience. So current cars, not a lot. I mean, there's a lot of older cars which I absolutely love. And perhaps, if I'm honest, that 5-car garage we talked about, we'll bin the Alpha out of it. I'll use one of the others for another day. The car that I spend most of the time looking about and lusting after is a Ford Capri. I've had 9 or 10, I can't remember now. That's probably why I like oversteer.
Yeah.
It's probably why I still can actually control it as well, just about. I think they're a great looking car.
Very cool.
And the prices on them are just horrendous now. So we've missed the boat.
Yeah.
I'm very, very sad about that.
Oh.
There would always be room in the garage for one.
For
3 litre S, you know?
I don't know much about them, to be honest. In terms of the 3 litre S, what were there either side of that, or?
Right. Okay.
How does that sit in the Ford Capri range?
The 3 litre S, the 3 litre S was the pinnacle of cars in sort of like 1979.
Okay.
Yeah. It's for it was 136 horsepower. Yeah, that's
it's more than that 80 in the Caterham.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 4 on the floor. It was just epically cool. You know, I mean, by today's standard, it's not even close to fast. You know, the old RS2000's another one in that boat, but I'm not person. You know. So it was the fastest of the Ford range, and it was what every sort of young person wanted at the time. It was just a cool, affordable car, and anyone that's a little bit younger than me would argue that it was never cool, but it was. it was very cool. And my dad, he had a couple of Capris as company cars, and he had a 2 litre S with a vinyl roof at one point. At that point, he was the coolest person in the world, as far as I was concerned. You know, we'd made it. We had an orange Capri on the driveway. Yeah.
Nice. Well, every 10 years or so, every new generation of people have these cars, don't they?
Well, interestingly, during the lockdown period, we obviously had a lot of staff off. Yeah. And so we wanted to engage with them and keep talking to them throughout time. So we were doing various surveys with the staff each week to see, you know, and some were about business, some were about life in general, and some were about cars. And we asked a lot of people, similar questions you've asked me. Money, no object, what car would you have? And on a more realistic basis, you know, if you could spare a bit more cash, what would you buy?
Yeah.
The F40 was the standout winner.
Really?
That was the one. It was a really eclectic mix of cars.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't very many overlaps. The F40 was a popular choice. But then there was a generational shift away from people my age. So if you could afford in the reasonably priced bracket, if you like, there was a lot of love for the hot hatches. So the Golf and the Focus RS. Yeah, they were what people want these days. You know, I look at those. They're front wheel drive. Yeah, what's wrong with you? Yeah.
Get a real car.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we have 4 cars, and we have purged our life of front wheel drive cars.
Yeah.
Well, even the Alpha's 4 wheel drive.
No, it's very interesting following these trends, because you see cars that are expensive now, but that's because probably the people who, when they were growing up, these cars came out and they've now got money and they're all buying them, and that's why they've gone up. But when you look forward and go, okay, well, what's going to be expensive in the future? And then obviously these things will start to come down again. Like for my generation, it was always like, it's like hot hatches and stuff like that. And then also cars from video games.
Okay,
so if you played like Gran Turismo, there's all these like PlayStation cars. So like a Viper GT2 racing car was like that was the one everyone had when they first had Gran Turismo. And
the Skyline.
Yeah,
Skyline
exactly.
GTR was
exactly. And all of these like sort of import tuner Japanese cars and stuff like that are definitely going to become and keep going to be more and more popular as time goes on, until they get replaced by electric cars, and then I don't even know where you go from that point.
Well, I say, you know, electric cars could still be interesting. I don't see any reason why not. It'll just be the noise we lose. I do worry about the performance thing, because it'll become a non-entity. But who knows? I mean, in some ways, you could consider the car dead already. If you look at a Tesla, which I would very much like, actually. Is that a car first, or is it a technology product first? And I'd argue that actually it is a piece of technology that moves about. Totally. It's not a car first. Yeah.
I could 100% get behind that theory.
It leaves a place for people like us in the Caterham world, you know, of giving back that driving experience for the small people that still want to drive.
Yeah, and as you said, like all electric cars, essentially now, they're all, even if you get your SUV electric car, just stick to Tesla because they make the fastest-ish ones. That's faster than a modern 0 to 60, and you can only go 60 miles an hour on a road in the UK. They're like sub 3 seconds. Now, most modern supercars, unless they're four-wheel drive, they're going to be the same. So your performance numbers that you're raving at down the pub because you've spent 200 grand on a McLaren, and someone's like, yeah, but I've got an SUV that'll do that with 4 kids in the back.
Yeah.
Like,
so it becomes completely irrelevant. So it's about the experience that it gives you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can then just focus on the other things. If you go, performance is not the be all and end all because literally every car now is really fast. Then you're like, oh, maybe a manual gearbox and something. A
manual gearbox, heel and toe in your gear changes.
Exactly. This art that may become lost.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, thanks very much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been very enjoyable. I hope I answered most of those questions fully.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm sure I'll go away from here and say 5 Car Garage is nothing like our.
That always happens, though.